Welcome to Life Happens, where Texans come to protect their legacy and prepare for the second half of life. Join your host, Attorney Kim Hegwood of Your Legacy Legal Care, and our weekly guest as we navigate the challenges that emerge as life happens. Now here's your host, Kim Hegwood.
Good morning and welcome to Life Happens with me, Kim Hegwood, and our very special guest today is Twila Lindblade. Kitty, good morning.
Good morning.
That's a mouthful, isn't it? Like you say, your name, I tell people your name's easy to remember because my mother's name is Twila.
I heard that one of your staffers told me that the other day. I was like, okay, yeah. You can just call me by my first name. That's fine.
Mom helps me out every now and then, and clients love her. So she helps a lot. But we're going to do some fun things today. And this is a topic that I really, really like. So I'm super glad that you're on the show today to talk about it, because I think families don't think enough about support groups. So we're going to talk about, you don't have to do it alone, the real power of caregiver support groups, because I find that when you have people that are going through the same thing that you're going through, makes all the difference in the world,
Absolutely.
But I've been that caregiver. So, and many caregivers feel like they can handle it on their own. I was probably one of them. So why do you think so many people hesitate to join a support group, even when they're struggling?
I think you hit a good point, that people think that they can handle it all on their own. And it's like, until you can't, right? And sometimes you just, excuse me, sometimes you just need you need someone to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, I know that you can do this alone, but it can actually be a lot better if you have someone to help you with. Like, it can be a much lighter journey. The load can be a lot lighter. And sometimes people don't really know that until they come to their first group, or until they just take that first step, right? Because I've had several families or caregivers who have reached out, and it takes a little coaxing and coaching and just soft support, just to let them know, hey, it's not scary. Like, you don't even have to talk the first time if you don't want to, but it's just unknown territory more than anything. It's just, we're humans, and we don't want to talk about our weaknesses. We don't want to admit, that we're struggling in a particular area, because, we have all these preconceived notions that makes us weak, and it actually doesn't. So I think just the unknown more than anything.
So for me, I was caregiving about 22 years ago. And so there weren't caregiver support groups then.
Right.
So it wasn't an option, but I found them once I really figured out that elder law was my passion. I found them. So I've attended a few. So why don't you tell our listeners what actually happens inside a caregiver support group and what doesn't happen? And so that way, for people who haven't attended one, get some ideas about what they can look forward to, because it's such a good experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So when folks get there, we try to give them very specific directions where the location is, because that in itself can, make people nervous. What if I get lost? All those things. I always give everyone my cell number, and just let them know, call or text me, and I'm happy to walk you through it. And then when they get there, we just do a very light meet and greet. We always have refreshments. Sometimes we have sponsors that will come and, just provide refreshments, light snacks, that type of thing. And we just have light conversation at first, just sort of checking in with each other. How was your week? Just light mingling for the most part. We do try to make it incredibly relaxed. I say that I am the facilitator, and yes, I'm a licensed clinician, but we're not in there like challenging, super, super deep topics. Okay. Because that's really another venue, right? So this is something they're very light conversations. And actually, I love it for people to have a sense of humor, but you notice the first timers when they come in, you can feel the heaviness on them. And so those that have been coming for a long time, they will greet those newbies. They will, make them feel welcome. introduce themselves. And then also, so once they have snacks and everything, I always provide a resource folder. And so the resource folder just has like, it has our agenda. It has like some little, housekeeping rules, just sort of the lay of the land type situation. Like, this is a confidential group. We need to be respectful of one another, just those types of things, just general house rules. And the folder also has like a lot of super useful information that are sort of basics. For example, what's the difference between home health and home care? What does long-term care look like? There might be a little, I think you guys have provided us like little cheat sheets on certain elder law issues. Like, this is, who do I reach out for X, Y, and Z? So the folder, is really sort of like, it answers a lot of questions for them up front, and it gives them a little piece of, okay, so this is legit. These are some resources. No matter what, even if I don't talk today, I'm going to walk away with some information and, something helpful that I can take with me. And so depending on the person, sometimes we do have some that they just come, they pick up the folder, they're not quite ready to talk, and that's okay. So, we usually start with, some introductions. Sometimes we will have, sponsors for our food. And so we'll allow them a moment or two to talk. It's not a marketing opportunity. It's not something that we want anybody to feel like pressured into any particular services or anything. Because I know that is something that I've been asked a lot of times, hey, can I come and talk to people about X, Y, and Z? And as much as I want to support all of our healthcare partners, we want it to be a safe space for all of the families coming, and to not feel pressured in any way. So I allow people to come and bring resources, but it is like no obligation. Like, I'm going to give them multiple, options. That way they can, make really informed decisions. So, some of our groups, we will have speakers. And so once we do our introductions and, of our facilitators and ground rules or whatever, then we will have a guest speaker who will provide some information. Like, I know that you've come in the past and talked to people about, different types of, like wills and, ladybird deeds and all sorts of things that folks might be interested in. So the speaker will give about 30 to 45 minutes, depending on the topic and interest, and it's engaging. So we allow the speaker to talk and then people to ask questions, kind of depending on what the topic is. They really have that freedom to ask all the questions, to kind of get more clear understanding. And then after that, we give everyone an opportunity to speak. Again, it's no pressure. If someone does not want to speak, then that is fine. And the groups are really open to people who have, who are in a caregiver role, but there's all sorts of different ailments. And so, we do serve an elderly population primarily. And so there are lots of folks who have dementia, Alzheimer's, and, cognitive decline. That's typically the main, disorder that we're kind of assisting caregivers navigate through. But it's not exclusive to that. So anyone can come, whether they are, helping someone with cancer, with special needs, MS, Parkinson's. There's all sorts of situations that people are navigating, and they usually have a common denominator of some kind. So it doesn't matter what they're really dealing with. So we allow everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves, share a little bit about the person that they're helping to care for, and then a little bit about a particular challenge that they're dealing with. Sometimes we'll do we'll do a good and a bad type situation. Like, tell me about, something positive, that's happened within your journey, here lately. And then share a challenge. And so we always tell the members that we are not there to fix anything. We are not going to be able to solve everyone's issues right there in that particular platform. But we can help them troubleshoot issues and sort of navigate them. And, sometimes it's just empathizing with them. Sometimes people just need a space to have someone hear them, and to trust that the people around them get it, right? And so anyway, we allow them opportunity to talk and to share. And I always have some sort of educational component, but depending on the group and who is in it, sometimes we don't actually get to that because people just need to let it out. They just have a lot that they're carrying. So I do have a structure and an agenda and a curriculum, but it's really up to the group, and we just kind of navigate as best as we can based on what their needs are, because I want each support group to be based on what those particular members need most. So
what I find with support groups, and why I always encourage people to find support groups, is because there's always somebody that has been in their shoes, that has already experienced something that can help them make their experience easier in the future. Because you run across things and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. But somebody else has had a similar experience and they tell what they did. And you think, oh, wow, I didn't even think about that.
right.
That might have helped. And so I think one of the big things about doing it is the fact that these support groups help each other
Yes.
through this. You've got, it's almost like you're all together in this war, you're fighting the same battles, and it's like, how do we make this easier for myself and the people that are in the group with us? And I think that's one of the huge benefits, for me and for support groups, is to see and I think that's what comes across with sharing and things like that, is that you learn from each other. And a lot of times, if you're going through a hard experience, having somebody else that can be there to cheer you on through that hard experience is huge.
Absolutely.
And so it's huge. And but caregivers, what happens if they, say, I don't have time for a group, can't get away, and so what do you talk to them about, just how do they kind of make time and in doing that sort of thing?
Well, we talk a lot about self-care. I think that in the very beginning, when folks first start coming and they're nervous, and actually yesterday I had a support group where the caregiver, is helping care for her husband that has cancer. She's been doing it for so long and carrying it for so long that, it's just second nature, and it's just like this bag of bricks that she's carrying around, and so she doesn't know what to do with it because it's just sort of been there for so long. And so just coming in, we kind of helped her just lay the bricks down. And I could just feel the sense of comfort, and the release once she did that. Because people feel guilty, right?
Mm-hmm.
They feel guilty taking time for themselves. And this particular caregiver, she shared that, sometimes she feels guilty because she gets tired. She gets tired of caregiving, and she gets tired of how her life has changed, and that this is not what she envisioned, right? And their days are different than they used to be. So all of these things, but she's not giving herself permission to feel, right? She thinks that her husband, who has cancer, he's the only one that's allowed to have those feelings, So we just had to kind of sit and talk through that and realize that feelings are not wrong. You know, it's not wrong to feel a particular way, but what could be wrong is carrying those feelings around, because then we are not able to care for our loved ones as much as we want to, or as much as we could, because we're not caring for ourselves. So self-care is not a bad thing. And I do believe that many of them, you know, feel like I'm just whining, or nobody wants to hear what I'm going through. I just need to suck it up. Those are things, you know, that people have been ingrained in them, you know, for generations, or, you know, our parents told us, you know, just toughen up and deal with it. And that's life. That's it, you know, but it doesn't have to be that way. Right. It's okay to be among other people and let them know, hey, this is tough. What I'm dealing with is tough. So, guilt, you know, having difficulty. Another big thing is having difficulty finding care for their loved one while they attend the support group, or just having so many responsibilities that the thought of taking out an hour and a half for self-care causes them stress, right? So what I've done with some folks who don't quite feel ready to share with the group, or don't feel ready to attend openly with others because they're just very guarded, you know, sometimes I will meet with them one-on-one and just sort of let them sort of pour it out at first, and just share a little bit up front before being amongst others. And sometimes I'll just give them general information, because I think the hardest journey for most of the folks that I've talked to is not knowing where to turn, you know, not knowing, like an example would be not knowing that Medicare doesn't cover assisted living expenses, not knowing that Medicare doesn't cover, you know, memory care, right? And that the cost for those types of facilities and care is a lot. And so they're just sort of trying to navigate, like, what can I afford? Why didn't anyone tell me this? Right? Like, I feel like that's sort of one of the big unknowns. They just kind of feel like they have to navigate it by themselves. For the most part, I would say that that's really the biggest hurdle is getting in their own way.
Well, I will tell you, Twila, I'm a little more brutal in if when caregivers are in my office, you know, and so because I watched my grandfather kill himself trying to take care of my grandmother, you know, and so you know, sometimes I've asked the clients the hard question:
Mhm.
you die, who's going to take care of them?
Right.
Because if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not getting sleep, if you're not doing something fun during the day to relieve stress, things like that, if you're not doing those things, you're going to die first. And
Right.
I'm brutal, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
because some people, I mean, I really think that sometimes people have to hear the hard stuff in
Mhm.
order to say, wow, okay, that was brutal, but you know,
Mhm.
I needed to hear it, because
Mhm.
I'm like you, are very passionate about my seniors, you know.
Right. Right.
And so I tell people all the time, I miss my grandparents. Hanging out with other people's grandparents is a joy, you know. And so, but I want people to be able to do better, have better, be able to be better, you
Yeah.
know, in this journey. And so, so let me ask you this, you know, for those that maybe can't get out of the house, support groups come in many forms, you know, like in person, online, things like that. There's all different kinds. How can a caregiver figure out which type is the best fit for them?
Um, there's a lot of resources on the Alzheimer's Association website, for example. Some of the tips that are on there are just eye-opening, you know, and sometimes it's you would think it's just like basic information, but sometimes the light bulb doesn't go off until you see it, somewhere, that someone else is kind of pointing it out for you. There's an Alzheimer's Association support group on the island, and they are actually virtual as well. So you can join either in person or virtual. We're not fancy enough for that yet. Just so far, most people have been able to join in person. If they can't join a support group, I highly encourage one-on-one therapy to, again, just sort of let it out and let some of that go. So there's a place called The Gathering as well. And they are also a support group, and they're structured a little differently. And I think that they allow for the individual to stay there while the caregiver leaves. I think that's how that works. There's also an organization, St. Thomas Episcopal Church, which is where one of our one of our groups meets. They have a program called the Apollo program, and the Apollo program is like it's a respite program each Tuesday, and so they give them the caregivers an opportunity to go have some self-care, pedicure, manicure, sleep, read a book, go to the grocery store, whatever you need, and it's free. So that's from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Tuesdays at St. Thomas Episcopal Church. So if you can't make a support group, like the times just don't work, then find a resource, find a way to get that support and that information. If you don't like a traditional support group, then go to church, right? Like go to a sewing club. We have a member who sings in the choir, and she has sang in the choir for 30 some odd years. Find something that's just for you, right? I've had a couple of people say that, I'm an introvert and I can't, like talking to other people is just uncomfortable for me, but keep coming. It gets easier, the more that they feel relaxed and supported. And also the other thing is that if you can't come, like let's say you come once or twice and then you miss some groups because you have appointments or whatever, I always encourage all of the members to reach out to each other outside of the group, and we will share contact information so that, again, if they can't come to the group, maybe they can just chat and have coffee with someone, right? Maybe there's a member who, there's a couple of members in one of my groups, both of their spouses have Parkinson's, and one of them is further along in the journey than the other. And so there is a Parkinson's support group as well. And I don't have like all the logistical contact information for that, but
it's on the Parkinson's website. Yeah, it's on the Parkinson's website. I can't draw on a blank, but you can find it online.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I've had people say that some support groups just, aren't for them because, they don't get hope, or they don't like the way something is navigated or something. That's okay. Maybe just keep working to try and at least find something that is giving you some extra layer of support if you can't go.
Perfect. So Twila, it's been a pleasure having you on the show today. So tell the listeners how they can find you.
Yes, ma'am. You can go to our website at stellishospice.com, or you can call our office at 281-377-3999. And on our website, there is a copy of our monthly calendar, because I facilitate like 7 in the community. So the calendar is pretty much the same every month, but if you go to the website, it will have an up-to-date one. It'll also have links to our social media, And on the flyer, it'll have my email address and my cell phone number. If people want to contact me directly, then I'm happy to, just kind of do a little hand holding, chat with them directly and kind of find out where they're at and help lead them in the right direction.
Perfect. Thanks so much for being on the show. We look forward to having you on again soon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Life Happens with Kim Hegwood. Be sure to tune in every Thursday at 10 a.m. wherever you listen to your podcast as we navigate through the challenges that emerge as life happens. The content of this podcast does not establish an attorney-client relationship or constitute attorney-client privilege, legal, medical, financial, or any other professional advice.